Yeah, that drug seizure turned out to be massive, didn't it?
Yeah, it's a big amount of money.
Yeah.
Like you're talking 13 million. I think it actually goes up again.
So 14 there.
Yeah, 14 million in total. So it's a large seizure. I mean, that's a huge proportion of the drugs trade, even for
200 kilos.
200 kilos of cocaine. Also, I think it's much smaller amount of cannabis.
Yeah.
And the guards have described it as supplying a huge quantity of it is going into West Dublin. Sometimes West Dublin can be a bit deceptive because the West Dublin as a Garda region, I think, includes sort of Finglas and Blanchardstown, where we might think of it as Ballyfermot. Not to get into the geography of these.
But are you talking about that whole massive area you're talking about when you say West Dublin? Is that coming from...
That's coming from the guards. They described it as being, a very important route in supplying cocaine and crack cocaine into the West Dublin area.
So we do know that one of the gangs that do control that area are that the grouping that would have come from the remnants of Eamon the Don Dunn's group, and there's obviously the two Waldron brothers who've had a very unlucky time of late, losing properties and watches and various other things to the Criminal Assets Bureau because both were targeted in separate cases. Yeah,
so, I mean, after Eamon Dunn was killed, Eamon Dunn probably controlled a large part of the drugs trade in North Dublin, but probably even further and beyond. What happened after that was things seemed to settle down, certainly in terms of the violence and the murders, but the drug dealing didn't decrease at all. And the people who, probably the man who really stepped in to take that leading role is a guy, David Waldron, who we've spoken about many times. Now, in part, he's become well known because of that long cab struggle that went through the courts.
Yeah.
Where he was described as somebody who'd been heavily involved in the drugs trade since the early 2000s, who had made a large amount of money from drug dealing and continued to be suspected of being involved in drug dealing. So that gang, where Eamon Dunn, it was traditionally read, of course, before him by Marlow Highland. And it was always regarded as being one of the most lucrative drug dealing operations in Ireland, if not the most lucrative. Traditionally had been sort of an offshoot of the Kinahan cartel, at least supplied by the Kinahan cartel, but did operate as kind of an independent criminal organisation. The Waldrons... the reason we talk about the two of them is because David's brother, Christopher Waldron, also was a target of CAB. Both of them had very large estates taken off them by the Criminal Assets Bureau. David Waldron's included a luxury property down in County Wexford, where I think the final bill for it, in terms of the renovations and the building and the site, it all came to well over a couple of million. Like, if you look at, we have obviously the expat drug dealers living outside the country, the likes of Daniel Kinnan and them, but there was that kind of middle management, the people who stayed in Ireland.
Yeah.
These were right at the very top of that structure. And again,
so let's have a look at that amount. So 14 million euro worth of cocaine, 182 kilos of coke, and another, whatever it is, of cannabis herb.
Another
right?
four, yeah.
So can we try and work out how much that would have, what is the loss to them? Because usually the figures, that 14 million, will be the street value of it. And of course it will not be what they're buying at wholesale for.
No, I mean, if you look at the seizure of, I think it's 182 kilograms of cocaine.
Yeah.
That would be, the street value is given on the basis of, I think, 60 euros a gram worth. Obviously, when you're buying in that bulk, you're probably talking about something like a 10 to 15% of the street value cost for these guys to buy it. So you're probably talking a couple of million euros, something like that.
Yeah, I had my calculator out, not the giant one, because where is that gone? Somebody has taken it. I was going to work that out, and I was actually going to throw out about 2 million.
Yeah,
but that's a lot.
That's a huge amount. Now,
for a sort of a we won't call it a regional, a national crime operation.
It is. It's a huge amount of money to lose, and it's not the first time, of course, that this gang have been the subject of major seizures. I think last year there was a seizure of it was up to €1 million in cash that was
Yeah.
linked to the same gang. So I suppose it shows you two things. Even that seizure last year, they couldn't take them out. But they are generating that amount of money. That's a huge investment. Obviously, some of these things get bought on credit or not. I suppose as well, you see the guards believed this was kind of a sophisticated operation. Obviously, the seizure was in Mount Mellick, away from the city, that they were basically processing the cocaine in this location and then bringing it in parcels basically up to Dublin. So that was really used as a storage point, as a transit point, from which to bring drugs into the city. It was described yesterday by Assistant Commissioner. The seizure was described. He said this intelligence-led operation conducted by the by the Dublin Crime Response Team has taken down the main supply network for cocaine and crack into West Dublin.
Right.
The operation targeting the sourcing, preparation, and distribution of substantial quantities of these illicit drugs, stop them from entering our communities, and is another significant blow to an organised criminal group. So
8 cars seized as well, which had been modified to supply the drugs.
Yeah.
They will be kept as evidence, 25,000 in cash, which is probably pocket money to these guys. But at the same time, it's just another, just when you talk about it, like we heard about this obviously yesterday, and we immediately wondered, is it the family again?
Yeah.
Because they're being targeted again and again and again, and they have lost quite a significant amount of product.
Yeah.
And when there is a targeted operation on any of these groups, I mean, really, let's look at Dublin. You have sort of the ones that are really being targeted at the moment. The groupings are the family, the Waldrons and their associates, and the big network.
Yes, and I mean they all have the sort of unique operation, really. I suppose in that they're not solely sort of Kinahan offshoots as they might have been. The big networks certainly have their own importation methods, as do the family, and we've seen with the family a lot of that is coming from maybe the UK or Turkish mafia gangs. We've seen how the family have used private airplanes to bring stuff in. But these are all independent operations. But the other reality is they will all work together. They all know each other. They will all take drugs off each other if there's a shortage or there's a problem. But this is a significant. Now, you see the modified cars is another thing that we've seen back. That was always a strategy of the Kinahan cartel, which was to have sort of secret compartments when moving drugs in cars. I mean, that's gone back over a decade.
Thomas Kavanagh used to regularly have his cars taken off him and ripped apart as they tried to find these secret compartments because they believed he was bringing guns and drugs in.
Yeah.
Because he was running a second-hand car business, wasn't he? And transporting cars into Ireland. But I don't think they ever actually found that.
No, but
maybe it was just... But that's what they suspected. But it's good to say to you that it just reminds me of when you talk about these gangs that are, we could probably guess, couldn't we? We could take a bet on who is, when you see this kind of level of drugs, 14 million seizure, it reminds me of the late Assistant Commissioner John O'Driscoll.
Yeah.
And he used to always talk about this sort of going back again and again and again.
Yeah.
This relentless approach to drug gangs, and in particular he would have been talking about the Kinahan cartel, that relentless approach. And what he was talking about really was, you'll hit them in the pocket once and it won't damage them or dent them at all. But if you keep hitting them in the pocket, eventually they end up in a whole pile of trouble. They owe debts, they can't pay their bills, whatever, and the groupings almost sort of implode.
Yeah, they do, because they have to meet those bills, and that puts pressure on them to either collect money or to, they start having to take chances, or, in order to make up that debt, they have to get a lot more drugs and try and sell that quickly. And all of that leads to carelessness and impulsive decisions. And that has all often led to them putting pressure on people under them. Those people under them then are more likely to maybe talk to the guards or one way or another. So it
that paranoia sets in, and
it does. And
but it's if you were in the drug business, right, and we were a little. Yeah, we now have myself in it as well. But anyway, just say we were a little Talbot Street-based gang. You're my underling.
No, I was going to say I'd be directing the operations, but go on.
Anyway, you'd be looking at the seizures and you'd be looking at the family and thinking, well, there's a huge concentrated effort on them. You'd be looking at the Waldrons, there's a huge concentrated, and the big network. So you'd actually be quite okay to be working away. And that's the way it goes, because they're not actually the guards aren't ineffectively putting out fires when it comes to, fighting crime in this way. They do target organizations, and the same way they used to target terrorist cell groups, and they try to break them down. And even if they collapse the gang and get a small prison term for a few key players, they actually, destroy the grouping. And then if they get out, they'll have to build it all up again.
Yeah.
But all the while, what are we going to call ourselves?
Well, we're the young guns, aren't we?
Oh, we are. Oh, we certainly
we definitely are the young guns.
How enthusiastic I was about that bit.
No, what happens, I suppose, is that if you look at, say, in Drogheda, like those gangs, both of those gangs were effectively really successfully targeted. But in order for that to happen, the specialist units, for example, and we've spoken before about crime and security, their workings are a mystery. But somebody has to say, well, look, we have this crime organisation here. Can we start looking at phones? Can we start looking at digital surveillance? Can we get in
the cab and various...
Get in the cab, get in some of the surveillance officers. Yeah. So all of that, those resources, they're not just floating around waiting for something to happen. They get targeted in particular directions.
Yeah.
Now, definitely there will be gangs that are operating now, probably today, that are nobody effectively knows about them, guards or journalists. There certainly has been some suggestion that people are starting to bring, there's young guys bringing in drugs from the north, from the UK through the north and down. There's also probably is a growth in gangs, Eastern European gangs coming into Ireland. I mean, operating in Ireland. I mean, obviously, they have been operating for a period of time. They will also be operating within a certain community that might be even harder for the guards to target, who might normally have people that have been giving them information for decades.
Exactly.
And those gangs,
they don't have those connections.
No.
They don't have that intel.
Yeah.
Harder. I remember actually talking to somebody I know working within the guards, and they were saying that they were trying to get a read on the Chinese grow house sort of activities around that. And there was about 20 different dialects.
Yeah.
Even though they brought in a translator to listen in on the phones or whatever, the translator would go, I don't know that strain of whatever Mandarin it was or whatever. So there's all those complexities, and even if you have a translator, you've sometimes heavy accents. You try and get somebody to understand what they say sometimes down in Kerry.
Or out in Dalkey even, don't flag off there. But so, and also drug gangs can rise very quickly.
Yeah.
So in the space of 3 or 4 years, people can go from having nothing to being something like
us.
That's going to be the young guns.
What are you going to spend your money on?
Car. Yeah. I'll blow it all on Rolexes. I'll have 4 Rolexes on each.
That aren't stonewashed. I might as well tell whoever's listening, whoever's out there listening to us, this story. I came into the office yesterday and Emer's just not as sensitive. So
no, she's not.
She's not. And you're not either, thank God. And I was looking at you and I was looking at the jeans and I was going, wow. And eventually Emer looked at me and went, what the hell is wrong with you that you haven't commented on this jeans? They were straight from the 1980s. Well, where'd you get them? Stonewashed. I haven't seen stonewashed in so long.
The 1980s are back, aren't they not?
Are they?
I think they are,
Did you buy them in a shop?
I did buy them in a shop. I didn't make them myself.
You didn't find them, though, at the back of the wardrobe. And will you ever wear them again after that?
I will, of course, wear them again. That'll encourage me to wear them even more.
I blame Emer on that one anyway, because she was just gutted that I had managed to stand there for 5 minutes mute without commenting on your clothing.
Yeah.
It's kind of mean, is it? Bullying? Workplace? Well, look, when the young guns we start working away while all these other gangs are, I mean, it'd be a perfect disguise for us as well, wouldn't it?
It really would.
Pretending to be podcasters.
It really would.
All right.
Okay. Thanks, Nicola. Robbie Lawler was out of control.
This is Double Cross, the murder of Robbie Lawler.
It was going to be an all-out war with him in the middle of it.
A Crime World special investigation podcast based on my new book, Web of Betrayal, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Nicola Talent and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.